Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from the Institute of Export and International Trade. Today's webinar is on customs classification and the importance of data in this. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with TariffTel today. My name is William Barnes-Graham, the Executive Editor at the Institute, and I'm delighted to be bringing you today's webinar on this core skill and requirement for anyone working in trade and customs. Now, on the next slide, we will start to introduce today's speakers. For those of you who are new to our webinars, I've been hosting this program for almost a decade now, so you're hopefully in safe hands with me. You're certainly in safe hands with Lynn Dewsbury, a trade and customs specialist at the Institute with over 20 years experience in professional trade compliance roles, including at Brush Transformers, Formax and Hexel, and Meggitt Aerospace. And it's my delight to welcome Elizabeth Davies from TariffTel, where she is currently a customs systems manager. Elizabeth has almost 3 decades worth of experience in customs and trade, including a level 5 diploma in advanced customs compliance from the UK Customs Academy. Indeed, the Institute is one of the founders of the UK Customs Academy, so it's always great to have a graduate from any of those sorts of initiatives on the panel. So a great panel, I hope you agree. On the next slide, though, before we get into the presentations, we're going to run a quick poll to find out a little bit more about you, our audience. So we are here asking, how confident are you that the data you use in customs classification is 100% accurate? And the options range from very confident to not confident at all. While you are answering that poll, some quick housekeeping notes from me. Firstly, you can contact me with any comments or questions using the question panel, which is usually on the right-hand side of your screen in the control window. We hope to get to a number of your questions today, though please note we cannot guarantee we will get to every question in the allocated time. As such, I will be prioritising questions that are relevant to the wider audience, so I won't be going into company-specific or even commodity-specific queries as such today. There are ways to get answers to those questions. We just really don't want to alienate the rest of the audience by going too specifically into one particular user case. Please also note that if your questions are short and clear, I am more likely to be able to read them. Finally, you will receive a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email we will be sending over the next few days. So thank you everyone who's responded to the polls so far. I'll give you 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Let's see how you responded. So, pretty positive, I'd say. 71% of you are quite confident and 12% of you are very confident. So, that's 83% are confident to some degree. 17% of you, though, aren't very confident, and no one said they're not confident at all. So that seems quite reassuring. I mean, Lynn, if I bring you in at this point, does that sound... That sounds pretty positive, doesn't it, in terms of confidence in the classification? Sorry, then, 1 sec.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, it's honest. It's good to see that people are quite confident with their product classification. So hopefully, you know, we are heading in the right direction. We are moving from just picking, oh, that one will do, and actually looking at what we are classifying and looking at the composition. So hopefully, yeah, we're heading in the right direction with our product classification there.
Good stuff, and thank you everyone for responding so honestly. However, on the next slide, at this point, I'm going to hand over to Lynn, who's going to introduce today's topic, which is indeed customs classification. So over to you, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at customs classification. And accurate classification of goods is essential for anyone involved in international trade. Commodity codes are used in customs declarations and other assorted trade documents. They dictate duties and several other obligations associated with international trade. These codes are crucial throughout the supply chain. They're requiring businesses to ensure and understand that they are using the correct codes with all of their partners. Product classification is the foundation on which everything else is built when trading internationally. Next slide, please. So customs classification refers to the systematic categorization of goods for international trade purposes. It's based on standardized codes known as HS codes. These codes are used to identify and classify goods for customs clearance, duty assessment, and statistical tracking. The classification system originated from the need for a standardized method of classifying goods for international trade, to facilitate the efficient movement of goods across borders while ensuring that compliance with customs regulations and tariffs. It was introduced in 1953 by the World Customs Organization, and it's used now by over 200 countries, and that's 98% of all world trade. So whilst different geographical areas have their own specific systems, they tend to all be based around the World Customs Organization's harmonized system. They have the same sections and chapters, and the first 6 digits will match the HS system created by the World Customs Organization. The UK's version is known as the UK Integrated Online Tariff, whilst the EU is known as the Combined Nomenclature. Next slide, please. The HS codes are known as tariff codes or commodity codes, and each code corresponds to a specific product category within the harmonized system, typically consisting of 6 to 10 digits. Commodity codes follow a tiered structure with broader categories represented by the first few digits and increasingly specific classifications indicated by the additional digits. This system allows for the classification of a wide range of products from raw materials to finished goods, and that's based on the characteristics and the intended use. So the first 2 digits represent the chapter, which broadly categorizes goods into different sectors based on their nature or their use. The first 4 digits become the heading, and that's providing a more specific classification within that chapter. Headings narrow down the category of goods, grouping together related items. The 6 digits make up the subheading, and they offer further specificity within the heading. Subheadings provide a more detailed description of the goods, distinguishing them from other similar items. Digits 8 to 10 are country specific, so we use 10 for importing and 8 for exporting. We also have an additional 4 digits that are used in certain circumstances, and these are known as additional measures. An example of one of those would be anti-dumping duties. Certain businesses in countries like China have set agreed price points with customs that are fair to the domestic market. They are given a 4-digit code to relieve the anti-dumping duty on import. This is a duty that's levied at substantially high rates to deter dumping of unfairly cheap products, which could have a detrimental effect on our economy. Rates can be as high as 87% for some articles, like bicycles and bicycle parts. Next slide, please. So now we're going to use our loaf to study the actual structure of a specific commodity code. And we can see that chapter 19 is for prepared foodstuffs. When we add in the heading, we can see the word bread is appearing for the first time. Moving on to the subheading 90, our sliced loaf having none of any other specialist characteristics in this heading comes under other. 30 gives us bread not containing added honey, eggs, cheese, etc. And then finally, there is no specific additional descriptions relating to our bread for the UK import purposes, so we add 00 as our national ending in this instance. Next slide, please. Commodity codes play a crucial role in customs declarations, in trade statistics, and regulatory compliance. They determine the applicable tariffs, taxes and trade restrictions imposed on goods by customs authorities. Additionally, they facilitate the collection of trade data for economic analysis, policy making and monitoring international trade trends. Commodity codes are also used by businesses to accurately price goods, determine transportation requirements, and ensure compliance with product regulations. Next slide, please. Incorrect classifications of goods can have significant repercussions, ranging from financial penalties to supply chain disruptions. When goods are misclassified, they may incur incorrect customs duties, taxes, or trade restrictions, resulting in either overpayment or underpayment of duties. Moreover, misclassification can lead to delays in customs clearance. It can trigger audits or investigations by customs authorities, which can then lead to additional costs and administrative burdens. Furthermore, incorrect classifications can jeopardise product compliance with health, safety, and environmental regulations, posing risks to consumers and the environment. To mitigate these risks, it's crucial to ensure accurate classification through proper training, documentation, and ongoing compliance efforts. It's imperative that you document your decisions and the rationale behind them. By demonstrating how you arrive at your determination, you can provide evidence of your commitment to compliance. In the event of a mistake, having documented evidence can show authorities that the error was unintentional and that could potentially result in more lenient treatment. Having thorough documentation is essential for demonstrating compliance efforts and mitigating potential penalties. Next slide, please. So if we look at the consequences of incorrect classification, we can get customs delays, which can lead to delays at the borders for customs checks, financial penalties. Misclassification can result in financial penalties. Incorrect commodity codes may lead to underpayment of duties, resulting in fines during audits. An overvaluation due to misclassification can also increase duty costs, affecting profitability and cash flow. We have legal issues. Misclassification may violate trade regulations or sanctions, leading to legal actions and fines. It may also fail to meet safety or environmental standards, posing further legal risks. And one of the most important is reputational damage. Misclassification damages trust with customers and partners, causing delays and quality issues. This harms a company's reputation and it can affect future opportunities and partnerships. Reputation is vital for long-term success. Next slide, please. The event of an incorrect commodity code being used, it's crucial to take swift corrective action, and this involves considering options such as voluntary disclosures and making amendments to import or export declarations through the official channels. Whether facing underpayment or overpayment of duties, businesses should act promptly to rectify the situation. Applying for voluntary clearance amendments in cases of underpayment and seeking repayment for overpaid import duty and VAT are essential steps to ensure compliance and financial accuracy. Timely and decisive actions in these scenarios are vital for maintaining regulatory adherence and avoiding potential complications in customs procedures. If you do need to reclaim overpayments, it's Customs Form C285, and for underpayments, you would use Form 2001. HMRC would then issue you with a C18 demand for the payment. Next slide, please. So some of my top tips for product classification, my first tip is to close all headings to locate the correct heading section for your product. It's a quick way to easily discount the headings not relevant to your product. Next slide, please. My next tip is to use the A to Z. I always use the A to Z as an additional tool to see if it shows any chapters or headings that I may not have initially considered. Next slide, please. And my final tip is to fill the room. Don't go it alone. Get the experts in the room with you. As the old saying goes, many hands make light work, and in this case, you're much more likely to make the correct determinations if you utilise the technical expertise within your business. If you still find that you're unsure that commodity code you're using is the right one, you can contact HMRC, utilise the services they offer as per the information on the screen, or if you feel you need more support, you can get that from both the Institute or TariffTel. Next slide, please. So I'm going to round off now with a quick look at the future and how single trade window, broker accreditation and digital product passports relate to customs classification. So the single trade window will streamline customs classification by centralising data submission, automating processes and providing real-time updates. It ensures consistency, transparency and traceability. It simplifies compliance and it reduces errors and administrative burdens, making trade operations more efficient and accurate. Accredited customs brokers will enhance the accuracy, efficiency and compliance of customs classification through their expert knowledge, which should reduce error rates. Their role is crucial in ensuring smooth and compliant trade operations. However, it is important to note that the importer or exporter of record will always be the responsible party, so therefore should check any advice given to them. And finally, the digital product passport. This is an electronic record that provides detailed information about a product's life cycle, including its origin, its composition, its environmental impact, usage, maintenance, and end-of-life instructions. Its key features include data on materials and manufacturing, its environmental footprint, and guidelines for extending product lifespan and compliance certifications. Thank you. Back to you, Will.
Thank you to Lynn. That's a really great overview there of classification as a kind of a requirement, but also some really good practical tips there and a nod to the future as well. So thank you, Lynn, for that presentation. We're going to run our second poll in a moment, but before we do, I just wanted to say a little bit about how you can get further educational support from the Institute on today's topic in customs classification. We run a training course on the topic, the How to Classify Your Goods course, in which an expert like Lynn will run through key aspects of classification, like the harmonised system, the UK online tariff tool, the regulation behind commodity codes, and also the general rules of interpretation for classification as well, which are really important parts of this. We also deliver a practical workshop on classification in which you can apply learnings about the topic to various real-life goods. This is a great option if you feel as though you understand the theory but need some support and practice at applying this to actual trading scenarios. So you can see the QR code on the slide, and I've posted some links in the chat as well. And on the next slide, we're going to run a poll. So please do say yes to this poll if you would like to receive further information about our educational support around customs classification, and we can get in touch with you afterwards to say a little bit more about that. Lynn, just while people are answering that poll, so just a note, by the way, we've had lots of love for the bread slide coming in the comments. So it's the best thing since I won't finish that.
No, don't say it, Will.
I won't say it. But we've had a question come in from Axel already, who asks, do all countries agree on classification, or is there kind of variation between countries on how classification is done?
No, while most countries use the harmonised system as a basis for classifying goods, they do add further subdivisions or specific codes. So the EU use the combined nomenclature, the United States use a harmonised tariff schedule, and we in the UK use the integrated online tariff. Certain products may be classified differently in various countries, and that can be due to specific national regulations or just differing interpretations. And just this morning I encountered a query where a UK customer was using a duty-free commodity code provided to them by their US supplier. And during a HMRC audit, the UK company received a clean bill of health except for one commodity code. And the HMRC informed them that the code was incorrect and that the correct code would incur duty, which they weren't currently paying. Obviously, the UK company immediately started using the code provided to them by HMRC, and they notified their supplier. However, the US supplier insisted that their provided harmonised tariff schedule code was correct. So in this instance, what they decided to do was the US supplier continues to use their original code while the UK customer informs their customs broker of the correct code when importing into the UK. And it does seem to be with the US that we have the most difference when making interpretation. But yeah, there are different interpretations depending on the country.
That's really good to know. I hope that was useful, Axel, and that kind of case study there just really illustrates the importance of paying attention to the detail as much as you can, right? There's a lot of trip ups which can happen with these sorts of things. So I think the more detail oriented you can be, the better is the sense I get. But yeah, thank you to Lynn, thank you to Axel for the question. Do keep on sending in questions, by the way. It's great, we're getting some great ones in already, so we'll have to Q&A later on. But at this point on the next slide, it is my delight to bring on our next speaker in Elizabeth Davies, who is a Custom Systems Manager at TariffTel. Elizabeth is going to say a bit more about some of the complications that can arise with classification and also some tips on best practice for navigating these, including some digital solutions. So over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Davies. I lead a team of classification experts at TariffTel. We specialise in customs classification, and I'm going to speak to you today about why the devil is in the data, the importance of getting detailed information for customs classification. Next slide, please. So we'll introduce me briefly. I've got 28 years experience, which makes me sound incredibly old, so I'm not sure I like that. But I've got that across various different industries. I started out in automotive, but I've also worked in aerospace, retail, transportation, and as Will said, I've done accreditation with the UK Customs Academy. We've been working with the Institute for a few years now at TariffTel, but this is our first webinar together. So I'm excited to share some information with you about TariffTel. And some of you may know us already. We've got some major clients in Primark, Marks and Spencer, and Boohoo and Asda, to name a few. So the structure of the webinar, I'm just going to talk to you about the complexities of classification, and why the devil is really in that data, the solution, and then how AI fits in with that solution. Next slide, please. So this slide might shock people a little bit, maybe the 71% of you that were quite confident with your codes, because we regularly conduct audits for potential future clients across various product ranges, and we do find on average 40% of these codes are incorrect, even with companies that are confident in their classification codes. Often our clients are underpaying or overpaying duty, due to a lack of understanding in classification and the processes surrounding it. And this can be due to the data available at the time and the data that people think they need to classify a product. Next slide, please. So if we just talk a little bit about the data, this slide really So the data people think they need is the tariff book and a description of the item. But what you really need is everything on the right-hand side, you know, intricate product details, access the WCO explanatory notes, which you have to subscribe to, reading all the chapter and section notes, understanding the GRIs, looking at rulings, whether it be EU VTIs, UK ATRs or US cross rulings, understanding explanatory notifications, keeping up to date with tariff code through stop press, reading and understanding all the guides. So all of this is where the customs expertise comes in, with people that are able to interpret all this data. We often find that people use the tariff code they used last time, which might have changed, or it might have been incorrect in the first place because nobody knows where it came from originally. There's no process, there's no audit trail. And classification is a bit of an afterthought with companies of all sizes. They don't want to specifically employ people for this role, so it could end up with logistics or purchasing, or with a merchandiser or a shipping clerk. And these people are often untrained and under extreme time pressures, so they don't have time to do all the necessary research to get the classification correct, even if they did know how to do it. We find a lot of companies use spreadsheets, which become out of date. You know, you've got staff changes, large number of products they can't keep control of. The spreadsheets become corrupt, they lose the data, they crash, they're unmanageable. And it's you know, it's crazy, there's no process. They're not checking the classification, it's not verified by anybody. So, you know, it's like checking your own homework from school. It's just done by one person, there's no check after that. So it's really important that we consider all these data sources and that we understand, as the importer, you are responsible for that commodity code. Next slide, please. So Lynn talked about the tariff book a bit earlier. We're going to use a simple product, a plant pot, which we've probably all got in our houses, to look at classification. So you can see if you just search plant pot in the UK's government tariff book, you're not really going to get a lot of help because it takes you to potted plants. And if you use the A to Z function that Lynn mentioned earlier, you're also probably not going to get a lot of help with plant pots. So the tariff book is a good starting point, but it often falls short if you're looking for specific products. It is prone to interpretation and you can sometimes get incorrect results. Next slide, please. So this is the sort of headache that we see. Nobody said classification was easy. So we'll talk about 3 specific points on this slide. The image, the use of images sometimes is missed. People don't use an image, or the image is unclear. There's confusion. There's confusion on what data they need to classify the product. It's a plant pot. What is it made of? It's made of ceramic. What type of ceramic? And it's often that people don't understand the information that you need to get the code until it's too late. You know, there's a chaos involved here. There's lots of questions and back and forth. This can be being done by email or by Teams or by phone calls, and it's all under extreme time pressure. So eventually you end up with a code displayed here which is incorrect, and an incorrect duty of 8% on this specific product. So we'll come back to the plant pot a little bit later on how you should do it. Next slide, please. So Lynn touched on the consequences of getting it wrong. I mean, nobody wants to get it wrong, but lots of companies are using the wrong code unintentionally. So the consequences, if we look at them, we've got border delays, incomplete or incorrect duty classification can cause massive disruption to your supply chain and impact your business's ability to deliver your products to your customers on time. You've got reputation damage, which Lynn mentioned. You know, repeated instances of failed product duty classification can damage your reputation with your customers, your suppliers and the authorities, and this can lead to a loss of business and decreased customer loyalty. The cost of these delays can be significant. Storage fees and potential penalties with up to £2,500. You could potentially be overpaying in duty, which could have a direct impact on your bottom line. You pay more than you need to. It's eating into your profit margin and affecting your competitiveness in the market. Or you could be underpaying and you could risk an audit where you're going to go back 3 years and have to pay all the outstanding duty you haven't paid, which again affects your profit margin. All this increases your audit risk, with the authorities. And Lynn talked about earlier, if you haven't got a process to show how you got there, it's a bit like maths at school. If you got the answer wrong at the end, at least you showed you working out. And it's the same with classification. We don't always get it 100% right, but we need to have a clear process of how we reach that code. Next slide, please. So, what is the solution? How can we make sure we have all the data we need at the right time? How can we ensure we follow all the classification rules and guidance and use all the right data sources, keeping the codes up to date? This is where TariffTel can help you. Next slide, please. So we're a bit different from other classification solutions. We believe the answer is to collect your data at source. Your suppliers know the product, they manufacture it, they understand it, they're a valuable source of knowledge. But with TariffTel, they don't need to have any classification expertise, they just need to know their product. And then you just need to know what data you need to collect from your suppliers, and then they can provide it. Next slide, please. So we're just going to give you a quick overview of TariffTel and the system. It's an online classification system, so we provide a unique approach. We seamlessly integrate options to tailor to everybody's business needs. So if we look on the right-hand side, you'll see there the customer, from our customers, we normally take a purchase order feed, or we take a feed from their master data system into TariffTel. If we use the purchase orders, we display that information to all the suppliers by shipment date, so they know what information they need to provide in what order at the right time. And we will identify, based on the product, what information needs to be provided. So if it's a garment, we'll ask for construction, gender, garment type. We'll collect the country of origin. We can use images quite a lot in TariffTel. So we upload and store images. We might be asking about the hemline, the neckline, the stitch count. We will ask the questions that we need to get the classification, but only the questions that we need. And our suppliers can upload all their documentation at the same time, so preferential origin, Martindale tests for slippers. So everything is stored. It's a centralised system where you hold all the information. And they have then what happens is we have a sign-off process. This is where the verification comes in. So either our client does it themselves, or we sign off the classification. So all the information is collected from the suppliers, it goes into TariffTel, it then assigns the commodity codes with the unique decision trees that we built with our classification experts, and then we sign it off. So it's fully auditable, all the questions and answers are asked within the system, there's full traceability of who did what and when, all the way from the supplier to the customer. So all the record keeping is there, and all the documented process of how you reached your classification is all in one place. So it's simple, reliant and efficient. And we keep all the tariff codes up to date. We're abreast of all the changes, so all our clients are informed of all the tariff code changes in advance, and everything's kept up to date. Next slide, please. So if we look at the plant pot again in TariffTel, the way that we handle it, we've got a clear image this time that's got a drainage hole, which was totally missed on the first classification, which does affect the classification of a plant pot. But if you didn't know to ask that question, then you wouldn't ask that question. It's not in the tariff book. So we will feed that purchase order data into the system. The suppliers will log in. We know that that's a plant pot. We'll ask them for the material. We'll ask if it's ceramic. We'll ask them for the type of ceramic, and we'll ask if it's got a drainage hole. They will answer those questions, and then it will pop out the code. The correct code here being 6914, which is 0% duty. So previously, because we'd missed the whole drainage hole, we didn't know what questions to ask. You know, you're paying 8% duty. So you can see how it can easily get wrong if you've not got that detailed data of the product. Next slide, please. So talking about keeping the codes up to date, we'll talk about Christmas. Everybody loves Christmas, especially in June. We're living Christmas now in classification. But HMRC obviously make changes to the book every 5 years, major changes. But there's also a lot of small regular changes. And these are not just tariff code changes, they're also wording changes, but it does affect the classification, which is why you need to be abreast of these changes. So if we look at pre-September 2022, there was a lot of confusion and divergent opinions around Christmas baubles, because it stated that they must have a connection with Christmas. So if we look at the bauble on the right of your screen, Merry Christmas, clearly a Christmas bauble, can be classified to Christmas, plastic 2% and glass 0% duty. But the bauble on the left, you could hang at any time of the year, so it's not really connected to Christmas exactly, but most of us know that we probably wouldn't get these out till Christmas to hang on our tree. So when they changed this in September 2022, this was well received by us and a lot of our clients, that they removed that connection to Christmas. So now, as long as you've got a decoration designed to be hung on a tree, non-durable with a hanging loop, it can be classified to Christmas. So it's important that we understood that change and we're abreast of it, so that our clients are not paying the old duty rates at 6 and 10%, but they're paying the new duty rates at 2 and 0%. So this just shows you how you need to be abreast of what's happening, not just tariff code changes, but also wording changes. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to touch on AI briefly, because everybody's talking about this at the moment. There's a lot of noise about it in classification. But if you just take on board the products that we've talked about, just plant pot and Christmas decorations, AI would really struggle with this and the level of detail required to classify them. Data is the backbone of accurate product duty classification. It enables us to make these informed decisions. We need these detailed product descriptions, we need the origin, we need a good image. And AI can play a significant role in enhancing the capabilities. It can gather and analyse large amounts of data and even suggest the classification, but it's not a standalone solution and it shouldn't be used on its own. I mean, the examples I've used today, like I say, they need that expertise and judgment of a human professional. It's not enough to have an AI tool looking at the tariff book on its own. Next slide, please. So if you want to find more about TariffTel, you can contact us at our website. We're often at all the shows with the Institute, the Import and Export Show and MemberCon next year. Thank you.
Thank you to Elizabeth. That was a really great presentation, really useful. I think lots of kind of going to the data to have challenges there, I think was really interesting. And that stat at the start about the number of companies not using the correct codes was quite staggering, I have to say. So yeah, thank you. Great presentation there indeed. We're going to run our next poll now, just before we go into the Q&A. So this one's asking, how do you collect your classification data? The options being for an Excel spreadsheet, you collect it manually, maybe use an ERP system, so that's enterprise resource planning, maybe use a third-party provider, and then there's an other option as well. And if you do say other, do feel free to type in what that is using the chat function. Elizabeth, we've got questions come in from Lottie. Picks up on one of the last points you made around AI. So Lottie's company is thinking about using AI in its customs classification. What advice would you give to them at this early stage?
I would say be cautious. it depends on the type of product you're importing and the level of detail you need to classify that product. It's a good start. It's a bit like a sat nav really in your car. You still need the driver. I've tested quite a lot of AI systems now, and they wouldn't meet our clients' needs. Machine learning, it will make educated guesses on the data it's been trained on. There was a Harvard Business Review in 2018 that bad data can rear its ugly head twice. So first in the historical data used to train the machine, and second in the new data. So I wouldn't write it off, but I would be very cautious with it.
That seems a sensible answer. It tallies with kind of the things I hear about AI in different kind of contexts as well. So thank you for that, and I hope that's helpful. Lottie, let's have a look at the results of the poll. So pretty even Stevens really. So 26% of people use an ERP. That's followed closely by Excel spreadsheet, which is 23%, 19% manual collection, and just 11% using a third-party provider. Quite a few people saying other though, so please do say in the comments what that might mean for you. But Elizabeth, just with that response there, it seems as though there's quite a variation of how companies are doing this at the moment. Any comments on that poll?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you've got a lot of people using Excel spreadsheets. I mean, the ERP system, our system does integrate and feed into people's ERP systems, because we often find, again, the data is out of date in those systems. So it depends what processes you've got to maintain the tariff codes within those systems.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, on the next slide, we are entering into the Q&A. We've had some really terrific questions come through already. So thank you everyone for sending in the questions, and welcome back to Lynn, who's joined us for this part as well. And in fact, Lynn, I'll go to you first. We've had a question from Alana, who asks, how could digital product passports and the single trade window affect classification?
Okay, I think we touched on it in the presentation, but the digital product passports will improve classification by providing comprehensive, standardised and transparent product information. The digital passport will detail the composition of the products, which really should greatly assist when you are checking the commodity code and the information that you need to be able to classify. The single trade window is an up-and-coming service that the government began to introduce this year, and it's currently at the testing stage. When operational, it will provide a gateway between businesses, so the UK border processes and systems, allowing traders to meet their import and export and transit obligations. And that will be by submitting information in one place. And if it can be linked directly to classification databases, we will know at an early stage if there are any issues, with a specific commodity code, and we'd have the opportunity to correct it quickly without incurring delays. However, I would still recommend that you always do your due diligence and check your commodity codes. The digital passport and the single trade window won't replace the need for due diligence.
Due diligence tools is always important, regardless of the technological kind of situation. But I mean, Elizabeth, just to follow up on that, I mean, in terms of the data side of it, what are the implications could you see of things like the single trade window and digital passports?
Well, I mean, the digital product passports will just ask for more data, more detailed data. A lot of this we already collect for our clients, with garments, using cotton. Is it recycled? Is it FSC certified? Is it regenerative? What type of cotton is it? Where are you getting that cotton from? Which country is the fabric produced? Where is it manufactured? All this detail will be required in the future for digital product passports. So it's important that people are thinking about it now and about where they're going to store this data. They need to store it in a centralised location, so they've got the history and it's easy accessible and available.
Makes a lot of sense. It really echoes a lot of the advice. I remember we had on webinars at the end of last year when digitalisation was a big topic, because the Electronic Trade Documents Act had just come through. And yeah, it's this really exciting moment of rising for digitalised trade. But yeah, businesses need to make sure they're ready for it, really. moving swiftly on though, we've had some great questions in. So Elizabeth, question from Caroline, who says, if we sell a bundled product with multiple items but with one total price, i.e. no price breakdown is available, how would I classify the tariff codes on the invoice?
Well, there's specific rules around classifying sets, so it'll depend if your product is a single tariff set or if it's a multi-tariff set. We find this a lot now with beauty sets. You know, if your beauty set is a face cream and like a day cream and a night cream and, you know, a face wash, you're generally all using it on the face, so can use it together. But if your beauty set includes a pack of socks with it or a cosmetic bag that you're going to reuse again, then you'll need to have a multi-tariff set. So you need to follow the GRIs and the rules to determine, is your set single tariff or multi-tariff? And if it's multi-tariff, you'll need to break down that set and break down the tariff codes and the values within that set. Because what you don't want it to happen, we had an instance with a perfume that was being sold with a cosmetic bag, 0% duty on the perfume, and that's the code that was being used because that was the highest value, but the bag was being missed and not classified. And then this company imported a lot of this product and didn't pay any duty on the bag, and then they had to go back and claim and pay all that duty.
Yes, I know from the training course we deliver on the classification that the GIRs can get really quite detailed. So yeah, it's things like sets, and kind of there's different ways you can package goods in bundles. So do have a look at the things on the training courses which we deliver to get more information about GIRs, because it is quite technical to say the least. Moving on to a question. Sorry, I hope that was helpful, Caroline, by the way. Thank you for the question. Question from Philip for Lynn, to begin with, by the way. If we use a third party to determine our classifications, who is commercially liable for additional duty costs and potential penalties if the relevant customs authority decides that the code is incorrect?
As the importer of record, it is always going to be your responsibility. The only time that maybe the broker is involved is if they are an indirect representative for you, where they are jointly accepting responsibility. But 90% of the time, I would say it's direct representation, and the book stops with you at the end of the day. If your name's on that piece of paper, then you know it's your responsibility to check and make sure the information's correct.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you again for the question. We're going to launch just a quick poll now, actually, because let's launch it now. So it's basically asking, we've had a really great presentation from Elizabeth. So this is a poll basically for you to say, if you'd like to receive any more information about TariffTel and their support around customs classification and their solutions, please do say yes to this poll. Also, it seems a really great solution right there is there, and some really great expertise at TariffTel as well to help you with classification issues. So please do feel free to say yes to this, and I'll post the link as well to the website in the chat. Just while people are answering that poll, we've had a question from Paul for Elizabeth on TariffTel, who asks, are TariffTel codes private data, or do you use the knowledge to share across industries who ship the same products?
Obviously, we don't share clients' data between each other. And for example, in garments, there is such a variation, certainly on the US side, on the neckline, the hemline, the pocket. So we don't share that data. Each client has their own system, and all their data is just their data.
That makes a lot of sense. I would have thought something similar. Another question we've had in for, actually I put it to both of you. It's a really good question from Michael, which is, you know, what are the most common mistakes a business makes when determining commodity codes? What are the real common pitfalls? Elizabeth, can I start with you on that question?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes back to this data again, you know, having the detailed data that you need when you need it, and knowing what data you need. So again, it's this knowledge and expertise and the understanding. Don't just use the code you used last time, because you know you will get caught out if it's the wrong code, and not having a process of how you got to that code.
Lynn, anything to add to that?
I think Elizabeth said it all there. The only thing I would say is, like, other common mistakes that I've seen throughout my time with the IOE is picking the wrong, misidentifying the product category, like using, wood for a table when it, you should be classifying it as a table, not as a piece of wood, and those types of things. So Elizabeth said it all. It's lack of expertise. Consult experts and use available tools out there. Don't just try and go it alone.
It's really sage advice, and the sense I get, we've actually, me and Lynn have worked together on a few articles on classification. We've done this series for our newsletter, classifying different seasonal goods for like different days. So for example, we did whiskey on St Andrew's Day and all that sort of stuff. It's quite a fun series to produce. But we always say,
a witch on Halloween, didn't you?
I did, and it's just really important to make sure that we always give out disclaimers, like get legal advice or get a consultant to look at your commodity codes you're using to verify that you're using the right ones, because it could cost you if you don't ultimately. So that's a really important point. Anyway, that's enough for me referring away. Let's go back one slide, but we're still in the Q&A. So let's do another couple of questions. So we had a good question in from Ivona. I hope I've pronounced that correct. And it's on the theme we've been addressing quite a lot in this webinar, but it's kind of about evidence. So what is good evidence for HMRC when it comes to classification, when it comes to an audit? And are there any sort of templates or things, examples available for traders to follow? Lynn, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to have a template because everybody's product is different. And, as Elizabeth said in her presentation, if you don't know what information you need, you can't go out and gather it. So I think what TariffTel are doing is amazing. I really enjoyed your presentation, Elizabeth. I thought it was really good. And, you are giving sound advice. If you aren't 100% certain of what you're doing, get help. Use the tools available, use consultancies that are available, and ensure that you get it right at the start. Don't wait till you get fined for getting it wrong.
Good advice. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you again for the question, Ivona. The question from Sylvia, which I'll again put to Lynn initially, but I'll be interested to hear Elizabeth's thoughts. Can commodity codes impact trade agreements and negotiations? So kind of what's the link between commodity codes and policy, I suppose?
I think that one's threefold. For tariff determination, commodity codes are used to determine the applicable tariffs on goods. So when countries negotiate trade agreements, they often agree on reduced tariffs or tariff exemptions for specific commodity codes. So accurate classification ensures that the products benefit from these negotiated tariff rates. And then you've got market access. Trade agreements can also specify which goods are allowed to be traded between those countries. So the commodity code will help define these goods precisely. That ensures clarity on what can be imported or exported under the terms of a specific agreement. And then finally, you've got your rules of origin. So trade agreements include rules of origin, which determine whether a product qualifies for preferential treatment based on where it was produced. So the commodity code is essential for applying these rules and verifying your compliance.
Elizabeth, anything to add to that question?
I mean, no, exactly as Lynn says, it starts with the commodity code, and then everything links to that, whether it's subject to any anti-dumping or, let's say, any claim preferential origin. It all starts with the commodity code. So it's really important to get it right, really, and not just opt for the other, as we find a lot of people do as well, because if you do that, you will be paying the highest duty.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Lynn. And just to point in terms of the policy, I mean, it's a really interesting time for trade. Obviously, just today you've got the EU putting tariffs on Chinese EVs. There's speculation about kind of new sanctions from the US on Russian semiconductors. So, commodities and both of the codes which are used to determine what tariffs are used against them, they are in the throes of a very different geopolitical climate at the moment. So do keep an eye on the news just in case, there is retaliatory measures which can impact various goods, could be whiskies or motorbikes that have been affected in recent years. So yeah, it's fascinating, but you do need to keep your eye on what's going on. We'll do one last question. I think we're starting to run out of questions. Just to say, there was a question on Northern Ireland and the kind of UKIMs and the impact of that on commodity codes. I would suggest, and I'll try to send a link when it's available. There's going to be a trader support service webinar on UKIMs in, I think it's in July is going to be, but just determining the date at the moment. So I would position you to go to that webinar because that's going to go into a lot more depth about how UKIMs is going to work and the tariff implications there. And that's going to be straight from people working on TSS and who are very much involved in that. So that would be my suggestion on that one, because it's slightly complicated, but yeah, but that would be the best place to get advice, I would say. So anyway, question from Marcus, and again it kind of follows on some of the questions from earlier, but I guess it's for Elizabeth first, and this is to say, we get our commodity codes from a third party. Is it worth checking them? I assume the answer is always going to be due diligence, check, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how reliable your third party is. As we said before, as the importer, you are responsible. This third party, have they got a clear process of how they're calculating your tariff codes? A process that can be audited? Are they keeping a record? We're looking at TariffTel. We're recognised quite favourably with Irish Customs through our work with Primark. So we've got a very good reputation. So I would just investigate, to make sure that you're getting the right advice, really. But yeah, ultimately, we go back to you. You are the importer. You are responsible.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And unless Lynn has anything to add to that, I think
I was just going to say, you audit yourself. You can audit your brokers as well. So ask them what contracts they have in place with hauliers. Go in and ask all the questions that you may think you may want to need at some point. You don't just have to rely on what other people say. If they're reputable, they'll be quite happy for you to go in and audit them.
And ultimately, if you're using a third party, you want to make sure you're getting good value for your buck. So seems a good idea. Right, well, on that note, I think we will have to start wrapping up. So thank you everyone for some really great questions. We're going to go through all of them, but we did what we could, and thank you to the panel for the responses to them. So just move on to a couple of slides. So yeah, big thank you, Lynn and Elizabeth, for the presentations and the answers. A really great overview there on the importance of classification, as well as some practical tips and data solutions for overcoming some of the challenges it poses. I hope everyone has found that as useful as I certainly have. So here, just a quick reminder that the Institute provides plenty of support for businesses involved in exporting, importing and customs, including webinars just like this. Membership at the Institute gives you access to a range of benefits that can help your business to succeed overseas, including exclusive access to our lunchtime learning webinar program that goes into areas like today's webinar, but in a bit more forensic detail. There's discounts on our training courses, there's exclusive guides and insights on various trade trends and regulatory changes, and access to our team of trading customs experts via our technical helpline, and of course, networking opportunities with fellow traders and trade professionals. Please do go to the website for more information, or you can scan the QR code, which will also be in the slides, which we'll be sharing shortly. So on the next slide, you'll see some of our other upcoming webinars and events. Our next lunchtime learning session will be on customs special procedures on 20th of June. This is a great opportunity to hear about how customs authorizations like inward and outward processing, customs warehousing, or AEO can support businesses to streamline their supply chain operations and better manage costs. Members can also sign up to sector-specific special interest groups at the Institute, which hold regular online meetings to discuss the trade and compliance issues that matter most to them. Our food and drink sector group will be the next one to gather on the 18th of June, and there are also groups for sectors such as manufacturing, automotive, and export controls. For more information on all of these exciting opportunities, please do go to export.org.uk/events. I'll just post a chat to that. Link to that in the chat now. On the final slide, A reminder, we will be sending the slides and recording of today's webinar in a follow-up email, which you should get in the next couple of days. Please do get in touch if for any reason this email doesn't come through to your main inbox. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. SED, please do let us know what you thought of today's sessions and any suggestions for topics in future events by completing the short exit survey. But for now, bye-bye.
Bye.